about the fact that Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are now living well beyond their means, not being able to rake in those big money deals, and some speculation that they are now actually eating into the inheritance left by both Princess Diana and the Queen Mother.
They have financial problems, and a part of those financial problems are that Netflix is not funding the manufacture of the produce.
They built a brand on royalty, rebellion, and ridiculous wealth. A $600 million dream wrapped in private jets and California sun. But behind the velvet curtain, something just snapped. Because guess what? That billion-dollar empire might be held together with inheritance money and hype. Leaked bank records now claim Meghan and Harry are burning through their fortune faster than they can rebrand it. Netflix won't fund them like they thought, and King Charles reportedly done footing the bill. How did the palace golden boy go from royal riches to playing financial roulette with Diana's legacy? And what's this about Meghan's lifestyle brand being more smoke than sales? Even their sell-out products were sold out, because barely any were made. But here's the part no one's saying out loud. If even their inheritance is running dry, what's left to lose? Stick with us, because the deeper we go, the more this royal illusion starts to crack wide open. You're watching Chatter Muse. Don't blink, because what's coming next could rewrite everything we thought we knew. Like, comment, and subscribe if you're ready to see what happens when the crown stops paying. Let's get one thing straight. From the outside, Meghan and Harry weren't just surviving post-royalty. They were thriving, or so it seemed. She thought she was boarding the billionaire express. Instead, she landed in low eight-figure reality. Harry's actual net worth, somewhere between $30 to $40 million. Inherited, not earned. And with no formal job, no palace allowance, and no throne in sight, that money wasn't growing. Meanwhile, their lifestyle was exploding. $20 million Montecito estate, private security detail that runs $250,000 a month. And that's not counting the chef, the travel, the PR team. Let's just say they weren't exactly clipping coupons. But here's where it gets real. They weren't just spending like they were rich. They were spending like they were untouchable. And when the illusion of wealth becomes the currency, it has to be maintained at any cost. Image replaced income. A curated facade of luxury replaced real financial strategy. And as that illusion grew, so did the bills. Because nothing says independent empire like being neck-deep in security invoices while launching a jam brand on borrowed Netflix buzz. But this wasn't just about splurging. It was about betting everything on an image, one that needed constant funding and even more attention. And when the headlines weren't enough to keep the checks coming, they had to find new money, fast. That's where the real cracks began. And that's when the whispers started. Not tabloid fluff, but insider leaks. Real numbers, real panic. A confidential report allegedly shared behind closed doors, and now circulating among palace watchers, painted a brutal picture. The couple's bank balance, not just lower than expected, but allegedly teetering on crisis. Hard to keep up the billionaire energy when your financials look more mid-tier influencer than media mogul. Insiders say their spending isn't just unsustainable, it's explosive. Think luxury retreats, first-class flights, wellness rituals that cost more than some people's mortgages. And the money isn't coming in fast enough to keep up. Not from Spotify, not from Netflix, not from that as-ever brand stunt we'll get to later. And now, behind the scenes, there's fear that Meghan and Harry may have already started dipping into the one thing that was supposed to be untouchable, their inheritance. Princess Diana's legacy, the Queen Mother's trust, funds meant to protect their future, not bankroll a California fantasy. And if those reserves are already being drained, that's not just a red flag, that's a 5-alarm fire. Because when you're living like billionaires and the money isn't real, the collapse isn't gradual, it's sudden. And the damage, it's generational. Ah yes, the Netflix deal, the golden goose, the we're set for life handshake that was supposed to turn Meghan and Harry into Hollywood royalty. Except it didn't. Insiders say the deal wasn't nearly as lucrative as they made it sound. Not a blank check. Not even close. In fact, Netflix reportedly played it safe, fronting small amounts in phases. Funding tied to deliverables, not dreams. And when Meghan floated as ever, her lifestyle brand, as a flagship idea, Netflix backed away from the cash cannon. Turns out, cutting fruit on camera and whispering about empowerment doesn't quite justify a multi-million-dollar line of luxury tea jars and hand creams. Behind the scenes, it got worse. Production was so limited that the line sold out instantly, not because demand was sky high, but because inventory was laughably low. It's easy to sell out when you only stock 6 units. What was framed as a runaway success was really just a controlled PR mirage, a sleight of hand, hype over substance. And when Netflix refused to act like a silent investor, Meghan's plans started to buckle. They weren't looking for a partner, they were hoping for a bank. But Hollywood isn't the palace. There are no guarantees, no royal bailout if your pitch flops. And without Netflix footing the dream, the financial gap became impossible to ignore. You know what screams financial stability? Launching a lifestyle brand, while your empire is quietly hemorrhaging cash. As ever, Meghan's glittery curated answer to Goop was supposed to be her signature move, a personal brand, a legacy builder. In reality, it was a fragile pop-up shop with the production scale of a high school bake sale. Insiders say Meghan was convinced the brand would catapult her into billionaire status. But when the dust settled, even staffers admitted the sellout narrative was mostly smoke and mirrors, tiny batch orders, inflated exclusivity, and just enough PR spin to keep the headlines glossy. And then, silence. No restocks, no next phase, no luxury empire rollout. Just pivot. Because within weeks, Meghan had already dropped the jam jars and pivoted to fashion. Of course, because when your lifestyle brand collapses under its own self-importance, why not dive headfirst into the most cutthroat, cash-burning industry imaginable? Sources close to the couple say the fashion line isn't about creative vision. It's about plugging a financial hole that's growing louder than their PR machine can muffle. And here's the brutal part. Even Victoria Beckham, with decades in fashion and actual design chops, needed David's millions to stay afloat. So, what chance does Meghan really have when your last sellout success had no inventory and your Netflix money's already drying up? Is another brand launch ambition or desperation? Because nothing says we're totally fine like a conveniently viral moment in the middle of a financial storm. Enter the American Airlines note, a handwritten letter from Meghan herself, allegedly penned mid-flight, addressed to the flight attendants, gushing with gratitude, perfectly phrased and timed just right. The stewardess who posted it just happened to record a TikTok, just happened to mention Meghan's elegance, and just happened to get picked up by People magazine, Meghan's longtime media bestie. No red flags there. Now look, maybe she really was just being gracious. Maybe she felt moved to show her appreciation in neat, cursive, and glowing prose. But in context, it reads less like a thank you note and more like a PR fire extinguisher. Because behind the scenes, brand deals were stalling, sold-out launches were being quietly shelved, and money rumors were swirling like a Montecito dust storm. So the sudden reappearance of Princess polished and poised on a commercial airline, right when the headlines were souring? Yeah, it was giving orchestrated charm offensive. Some insiders even claimed it was staged, that the entire interaction was approved, prepped, and pipelined to go viral. Because when the illusion of wealth is cracking and the empire feels like it's one invoice away from collapse, you do whatever it takes to keep the myth alive. Even if it means rolling out handwritten notes like, they're the new Birkin bags. For a while, there was one unspoken assumption holding it all together. One invisible safety net. No matter how wild the spending got, No matter how many brand deals fizzled or headlines turned, the crown would step in. If things really fell apart, surely King Charles wouldn't let his own son, his spare, sink. But now, that illusion's been shattered too. Multiple royal insiders say Charles has officially shut the vault. No more quiet bailouts, no more blank checks, no more funding the Montecito fantasy. And it wasn't just a financial decision, it was reputational. Sources say Charles is focused on protecting the monarchy's image, especially in a time of transition. He's dealing with aging royals, internal reform, and public scrutiny. He doesn't want Meghan and Harry's California chaos dragging down the crown. So, the message allegedly was clear. This isn't personal, it's strategic. You wanted independence, now live it. And it turns out, being truly cut off from royal resources looks a lot less like freedom and a lot more like financial freefall, because that inheritance money was never meant to fund a billionaire brand machine. It was meant to secure a future, not buy lavender jam, private jets, and aspirational wellness content. And now that the royal cash flow has stopped, what's left is a brand without a safety net. When Meghan and Harry left the palace, they didn't just walk away from tradition, they walked into a spotlight they controlled. No protocols, no palace advisors, no press restrictions. For the first time, they got to shape the narrative, the freedom to tell their story, on their terms. But what happens when that story stops selling? The mansion, the curated photos, the brand launches, it all painted a picture of billionaire bliss, a fantasy of reinvention, of doing royalty better than the royals. But according to insiders, the real numbers were never even close. And when the illusion starts to crack, when income dries up and deals fall through, you're not just losing cash, you're losing control. Meghan, by many accounts, was laser focused on billionaire status, not for the money alone, but for what it meant. Power, validation, proof that leaving the firm was the right call. But now the empire's looking more like a house of cards. The jam brand fizzled, Netflix isn't buying, Spotify walked away, and the public, they're not just skeptical, they're exhausted. The same media machine they once used to craft the fantasy is now dissecting it, frame by frame, and without a palace or a paycheck behind them. Every PR stunt, every product pivot, every perfectly posed photo just raises one question. Is the Royal Rebel brand already broken? When a brand starts collapsing from the inside, there's one reaction more dangerous than denial: desperation dressed up as strategy. With As ever quietly abandoned and Netflix funds running dry, Meghan pivoted hard. Next up, fashion. Because when your lifestyle line dissolves into jam jokes, the logical move is couture, right? Sources close to the couple say this isn't about creative vision. It's about plugging a widening financial sinkhole, fast. Early drafts of Meghan's so-called fashion venture, reportedly all branding, little product, minimal infrastructure, no manufacturing base, just more image. Think less Versace, and more vibes with a logo. And here's where it turns from ambitious to alarming. One insider claimed Meghan is now reaching out to celebrity partners, not out of collaboration, but survival. Big names, fast deals, Hail Mary partnerships just to keep momentum alive. But if that sounds familiar, it's because we've seen it before. Chasing relevance through borrowed star power. Not because the idea is strong, but because the brand behind it is slipping. Even the whispers of Meghan being snubbed by Taylor Swift and Dolly Parton, yes, Dolly, add fuel to a growing perception. That desperation is replacing strategy, and the more she scrambles to stay in the game, the more obvious it becomes. They're running out of moves. This isn't just a financial pivot, it's an identity crisis in designer packaging. There comes a point when the PR fades, when the influencers stop posting, and the money just runs out. And for Meghan and Harry, sources say that moment is dangerously close. Behind the filtered photos and curated charm, Insiders describe a quiet panic, strategy calls turning into scramble sessions, old allies being contacted again, not for nostalgia, but for lifelines. Because without royal funding, without a hit brand, without Netflix fronting the next move, what's left? A lifestyle that costs more to maintain than their brand can generate. A global image with no war chest behind it. That inheritance, once a cushion, now a last resort. And even that, according to royal insiders, may be nearly gone. And so the question becomes, what happens when there's nothing left to burn? Will they return to the palace, metaphorical hats in hand, begging for another bridge they've already torched? Or will they double down, sinking deeper into the illusion they've spent years selling? Because when the money vanishes, you're left with the truth. And for this couple, that truth might be harder to manage than any headline. No more soft landings, no more royal rescue plan, just the raw cost of branding yourself into a corner. Every fairy tale has an ending. The question is, who gets to write it? For Meghan and Harry, the story they crafted was bold. Leave the palace, reinvent royalty, build a billion-dollar brand powered by independence, glamour, and global sympathy. But now, the numbers are whispering something else. The money's drying up, the partners are hesitating, and the crown, the institution they walked away from, is no longer taking calls. There are no more excuses, no royal fallback plan, no Netflix blank check, no new product line to save the narrative. All that remains is the image, the illusion. But even that is wearing thin, because in the end, they didn't just bet on fame. They bet on the power of perception, that the world would keep believing, even when the foundation cracked. And now, with that illusion exposed, there's one last card to play. Rebuild in truth, or keep spinning the fantasy until even their most loyal supporters stop clapping. You're watching Chatter Muse, and this royal saga isn't over yet. If you've been watching the illusion unravel with us, drop a comment, hit like, and subscribe, because what comes next could be the final twist no one saw coming.